Joining us right now via Zoom is Father James Brent. He is with the Order of Preachers, the Dominicans. He is an assistant professor of philosophy at the Dominican House of Studies in Washington, D.C., and he's also the promoter of the Angelic Warfare Confraternity. Good morning to you, Father. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, praise be to God. You know, the thought of an army of men and women praying for our purity, for our chastity, is a very attractive notion. And the thought further that we could join such an army and contribute that way seems to be incredible. Tell us, what is the Angelic Warfare Confraternity?
Well, it's more than just a thought. It's a reality. It's what you've been talking about. The Angelic Warfare Confraternity is an ancient confraternity of the Dominican Order. It goes back to St. Thomas Aquinas himself, who received a special grace of chastity and purity in his life. There was a special episode after he joined the Dominican Order where his family was against him joining the order, so they seized him literally from his novitiate while he was traveling, and they put him in the family prison in one of the castles that they had, and they basically said, unless you change your mind, you're not leaving. He did not change his mind, and he stayed in that prison for a year, which turns out to have been a very productive time. It's said that during that year he memorized the Bible. He had a photographic memory, so it worked out well. But then after a year, his brothers were very sick and tired of the whole thing, so they conceived a rather sinister plot, and they went into town and they found a prostitute, and they brought her and they sent her into the cell where he was kept in order to seduce him, and he refused. And as the story goes, he grabbed a half-burning log from the fire and chased her out of the room, and she fled. And as she fled, the door slammed, and he traced the sign of the cross on the door, and he fell to his knees, and he thanked God for granting him protection of his chastity and purity. Now, there's already a lesson there. I mean, we should always thank God for the protection that he grants us in moments of temptation. But as the story goes, at that moment, two angels appeared and girded him about the waist with a cord and said, "Never again will you be tempted to sin against chastity and purity." And we know from the records of the canonization process, many people remarked upon the tremendous and obvious innocence of St. Thomas Aquinas. He just had a kind of aura of purity about him. And after he passed away, the cord that he wore passed into the hands of the Dominican friars, and it's available. We still have it to this day in a church, one of our Dominican churches and priories in Italy. And after he passed away and this cord was available, people began to take cords of their own, touch them to the cord of St. Thomas, put them on, and pray to him for chastity and purity. And what they discovered was that it worked. I mean, they really received grace and it was a grace that either diminished the temptations they experienced or increased their strength in resisting them. And so many people started to do this, many thousands of people started to do it, and eventually the Dominican fathers organized them into a confraternity, and they instituted a sacramental, a blessed cord or medal in honor of St. Thomas. And the members would pray daily certain prayers for each other, for chastity and purity. And then that confraternity grew and grew. In the 1700s, the Pope established it as an international, a universal confraternity of the whole church and attached indulgences to it. And it has been present in the church down to this day. Although in the last 10 years or so, it's been undergoing a rather dramatic revival, and many tens of thousands of people have joined. I have a file with many, many testimonies from people who tell me it really worked. I have testimonies to people receiving healings from wounds of chastity and purity. I have testimonies to marriages being reconciled. I have testimonies to people being set free from the chains of pornography. I have all sorts of testimonies. And it is really very powerful.
We're talking with Father James Brent of the Order of Preachers about the Angelic Warfare Confraternity. And Father, I don't know, I think the coolest thing you said a minute ago was that Thomas Aquinas' family had a family jail. I may institute that in the house. I think that is a great idea. But what a powerful story. A year in prison to be and to take it joyfully, to take it and use the time in such a productive way. And then, of course, to have this great test of temptation at the end of it. What a powerful testimony for the rest of us. You know, many times, Father, we're going to go up against a break here in a moment, but many times I have said in my own battle with purity and chastity that I long for the day in the beatific vision to be freed of the temptation. And I've experienced a great mystical experience in my life where I was given much grace to maintain purity and chastity, so I can appreciate it. But that temptation every day for at least most men, but women too, is great. These spiritual graces that the confraternity enjoys, these are powerful ones, I imagine?
They're quite powerful. And we have many testimonies to that the way we describe it is that it gives people either the grace of greater strength to resist temptations or a diminishment of temptations altogether. We want to be clear, though, it's not a magic wand that will make all of one's temptations go away or all of one's struggles go away. There's no such magic wand. The way to think of it is it's an extra help. And another way to think about it is that it's a means for growing in chastity and purity. So these virtues of chastity and purity are virtues that we grow into over time and generally over a long period of time. And just as we grow into temperance with respect to food, learning to eat the right things at the right time and the right way for the right reasons, so human beings learn gradually how to live out their human sexuality in a way that's life-giving, as opposed to one that's really personally destructive. So the confraternity offers us a grace to grow.
Forgive me, Father, but I'm going to ask you to hold that thought. We have a short break we have to take. We're going to be right back. We're going to continue our conversation with Father James Brent, Order of Preachers. Tell me about indulgences. This seems like a powerful opportunity.
Well, there's many spiritual benefits attached to the confraternity. It's really a sacramental. There's the blessed cord and medal that the person wears, and it's blessed specifically to help a person thrive and grow in chastity and purity and to fight the good fight. And it's a powerful aid for that. But there's also the entire group of people praying in the church, in the confraternity, praying for one another. And that's a very powerful aid as well. When you combine the sacramental and the people praying for one another, you have a lot of grace pouring in. There's other benefits, which is that the person who enrolls receives St. Thomas Aquinas as a patron in matters of chastity and purity, as well as Our Lady of the Rosary, who's a co-patroness of the confraternity, or the patroness of the confraternity. And there's another benefit, which is that there are many indulgences attached to it. In fact, there's 5 indulgences. There are plenary indulgences available, first on the day that the person enrolls in the confraternity, but then also every year on the feast of Christmas, Easter, the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas, January 28th, the feast of the Annunciation, March 25th, the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary on August 15th, and on All Saints' Day, November 1st. Every one of those days each year, the members are eligible to receive a plenary indulgence on the usual conditions.
Father, we were talking in the last segment about the Planned Parenthood case over there and on abortion and banning abortion. And one of the major issues today is that of chastity. We are having issues all across the world, but especially in America today. Can you speak about the importance of the Angelic Warfare Confraternity and why should people seriously consider this today?
Well, so many of the issues that are at the root of the culture of death have to do with a lack of chastity and purity and a widespread just sexual sin. And there's a certain irony that has taken place here with the confraternity, and that is just as the sexual revolution was kind of breaking out in the 60s. I mean, actually, you can make a case it started earlier, but generally people point to the 60s as the time when it's really kind of sexual chaos just sort of broke loose in our society. And it's so ironic that just at that same time, so many devotions in the Catholic Church started to diminish, and people started to practice these things less and less importance was placed on them. And among the devotions that sort of waned during those years was the Angelic Warfare Confraternity. But what happened was, over the course of several decades, as people lived their life according to the false promises of the sexual revolution, they discovered a lot of personal pain and turmoil, many horrible effects of it, abortion being just among one of them, divorce being another, promiscuity, sexually transmitted disease, the whole disaster that we see around us in our society. So by the time the early 2000s came around, people had really experienced personally the devastating effects of an unchaste life. And individuals started to seek out the Angelic Warfare Confraternity, and it really started to grow again because individuals, lay people, were really asking for it and really seeking it out. And they could see something has gone terribly wrong in our society, and I personally need help to deal with life in a world that's like ours.
Father,
it's so saturated with sex everywhere.
Father, I had never heard of the Angelic Warfare Confraternity until I actually joined the novitiate for the Dominican Order with the province of St. Joseph. I was there, and that was the first time I actually had heard of the Angelic Warfare Confraternity. I was like, how have I never heard of this before? And why isn't this being preached from the rooftops? It seems like this is the answer to a lot of our problems. How do people join this?
That's a great question. More and more people are hearing about it. It's growing here and there, all over the place. And the best way to join is simply to go to the website, angelicwarfare.org, and there's a tab, How to Enroll, and there are step-by-step instructions on how to do so. And there's also the prayers, the daily prayers of the confraternity available on the website. And a lot of people begin to say the prayers even before they're able to enroll, because it takes time to enroll, to acquire the membership packet and find a priest to do the enrollment and send in the enrollment form and those sorts of things. But people begin saying the daily prayers right away. And many people tell me that as soon as they begin saying the daily prayers, they already experience good effects.
Wow. Now, Father, can I ask some, I'm going to call them dumb questions. They're probably not, but I'm going to ask them anyway.
Sure.
Does this confraternity have anything to do with the Third Order Dominicans, or is there any conflict there? Can someone not be a part of the Third Order Dominican spirituality, or could they be of Franciscan spirituality? Can they be,
yes.
What are the requirements?
The Third Order is an association affiliated with the Dominican Order that brings with it promises to undertake certain observances and membership in chapters and things like that. The Angelic Warfare Confraternity is a separate organization, also associated with the Dominican Order and entrusted to it, but has a far more open sort of membership. Okay, so anyone from any state of life, any religious order, any association can join the Angelic Warfare Confraternity. So I have diocesan clergy, there are religious women, there are seminarians, men and women from all orders in the church, lay people, single, married, divorced, widowed, everyone. This is for all people in the church, all states of life.
And what are the requirements in particular? How does one begin the process? And you mentioned an application and the ceremony. Can you maybe talk about that in greater detail?
Okay, great. Well, there's not so much an application process because again, anyone who wants to join may join. We suggest preparation for it by learning the daily prayers and reading the catechesis on the confraternity that's available on our website. Then once you order the membership packet, there's a booklet, and if someone reads through that, that's sufficient preparation to join. And then there's an enrollment ceremony that one goes through where the priest blesses the cord and medal of St. Thomas, and one says, I'm going to live by these practices. Now, there are 3 basic practices of the confraternity. Number 1, to say the daily prayers, which again are available on the website, but there's 2 daily prayers for chastity and purity. They're each about the length of maybe the Our Father, or maybe slightly longer. And there are 15 Hail Marys that one says each day for chastity and purity. And these prayers are for oneself and for all of the other members of the confraternity. So that's the first practice, is to say the daily prayers. The second practice is to wear the blessed cord or medal as continuously as one reasonably can, much like if one were to enroll in the Brown Scapular confraternity.
And the priest that does the enrollment ceremony, does this have to be a Dominican? Does it have to be a particular kind of priest, someone who's already a part of the confraternity?
Any priest can give the blessing of the cord and medal. But in order for a person to be officially enrolled, it's really important for us to have the enrollment form that's in the packet. So we ask the priests and the people who are enrolling to contact us, let us know they want to enroll. We'll authorize the priest, so to speak, and that means we'll give him the faculties to officially enroll people, and then people can send in the form to us to be enrolled, to be inscribed in the register. All that is spelled out on the website.
Father, there's so many great, practices, so many beautiful prayers that Holy Mother the Church provides for the laity. This being one of them, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who perhaps is struggling with the sin of impurity, but does not have the doesn't have the discipline of a prayer life?
Okay, that's a good question. We want to be clear about one thing when it comes to these practices. None of them bind under pain of sin. So if a person were to join the confraternity and not say the prayers one day, that would not be a sin. We want to be really clear about that. However, if a person joins and doesn't say the prayers, they lose the benefits from saying the prayers. And we have lots of testimonies from people that join, and they say, well, I joined, I started to wear the cord and medal, I was saying the prayers daily, and I was doing great. I had far fewer temptations and much greater strength in resisting temptations when they came. But then I stopped saying the prayers. And what happens is the temptations tend to come back. So what this does is it gives people an experience that there's an advantage to praying and participating in the prayers of the confraternity, and it can actually help people grow in a stable prayer life.
We are just down to a couple of minutes here. The website, by the way, is angelicwarfareconfraternity.org. That's angelicwarfareconfraternity.org. We're linking to it on our social feeds as well. Just about a minute or so left. Father, would you say that this is especially important for, I would say as a married man, this is important, but for married couples too?
Yes, we have lots of married couples that join because married couples are not immune from temptation to sexual sin. So we have lots of married couples that join because there's sins against chastity in marriage. A lot of people don't think about that, maybe especially when they're young. We think of sexual sin and sexual temptation as just something for the youth, but any priest who hears confessions will tell you that married couples commit sexual sins of different kinds. So it's important for everyone in the church.
All right. Father James Brent, Order of Preachers, thank you for your time today. We're very grateful.
My joy. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, God love you, and have a great day, Father. The website again is angelicwarfareconfraternity.org. That's angelicwarfareconfraternity.org. And that is going to do it for the radio side of our Catholic Drive Time program today.